Scituate's annual town election is May 31st, 2025 in that high school gym from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. Two select board seats are contested. In position 2, it's Nicolai Afanasenko versus David Daphne, and Mr. Afanasenko joins us now, better known as Dr. Nico.
Dr. Nico.
You're a chiropractor. Tell us why you're running. Why select board? Why now?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Seth, for letting me do this. This is a wonderful opportunity to be in front of the people of Scituate. And these days, with everything on social media and media changing, things get decentralized, and I'm really excited to just have the opportunity. So thank you. You know, I am a very much family-first person. I love being in Scituate. I love living here. We've been here 22 years now. We were all over the place before that, and my wife Angela and I have really made Scituate our home and have been, I think, very involved in Scituate since we got here in lots of different ways. I've thought about selectmen for quite a long time, honestly, not because of some kind of ego, but because it's another way for me to be involved, learn about how town runs, be a part of how it works. And it really excites me to just have an opportunity to find new ways to get out amongst my community. The family first thing is something I hope you can ask anybody that knows me about. And in the past, it's been a thing that has stopped me from being involved with the select board because it's a lot. It's a big thing to chew on. It's a lot of information. It's a lot of learning. It's a lot of meetings. And when I've been coaching or doing scouts or doing other things with my kids over the years, there have been times where I thought about it and I thought, I can't do it now. Or maybe even better, my wife said, don't you dare do it now. And now I have two kids in college. I have one more that's going to be going in another year, who's a junior here at the high school. And they are doing amazingly. They are independent. They are wonderful young people. And that means I'm not making lunches. I'm not driving them to sports. I'm not chasing them around and following them to wherever they go. And all of a sudden you start thinking, okay, maybe I have a little bit more time on my hands. And so it's a good time, I think, for me to try it and see if I can be a bigger part of how this town really works.
If elected, what do you think some of your top priorities would be?
You know, so this is going to sound cheesy to a lot of people, but I sincerely mean this. I am a candidate that whose platform is to not have a platform, whose agenda is to not have an agenda. And what I mean by that is, if I got elected, then I'm not there to tell you and the other people in town what my ideas are. I'm there to listen to other people's ideas and to try and figure out how I can incorporate those ideas into our reality here, and to listen to their criticisms and their passions and figure out what we can do to improve our town. The select board is very complex and for better or worse, has its hands in all sorts of different things in pretty much every department. And to assume that I know better than everybody else, or to assume that I have all the answers, is fairly naive of me, if not egotistical, and I really don't think of myself that way. I really have a passion for trying to be part of a team, and to me, that's the best thing I can do. So my agenda is to try really hard to learn as much as I can, to listen to everybody from any place in town, and regardless of my politics, my position, my opinions, to really try and make sure I give people an opportunity to voice their concerns before I start to have a judgment or a decision about a topic.
I had a lot of residents reach out to me before these interviews, and they wanted me to ask the candidates what political party was their preference. I'm not going to ask you that because this is a nonpartisan race. However, I will ask you, do you think residents should know a candidate's political party preference?
I think that relative to public information, in a general sense, knowing where a person who is an elected official is registered is a perfectly fine concept. And I have no problem in this town, you know, saying that I'm registered independent because I want the ability to learn from multiple places and take in information from multiple places. Party being part of the election in a local town, I actually don't think it's necessary. I think that ultimately when you talk about a local election, you're talking about one team. You're talking about, we're not a two-party system in a town. We're a team. We're trying to get the same places. And for whatever reason, each resident chose to be here. They have the ability to move. They have the ability to build a home here, to be part of this community, and they get to choose how much of involvement they have. But for me, it's not a choice. For me, it's absolutely a necessity for me to be part of the people that are around me. And it doesn't matter to me where they're coming from, where they've been before. I just want them to try and figure out how to be a team, build consensus forward. And so I don't really think that party plays a big role in a local election like this.
Two of the most senior members of that select board, Karen Canfield, Karen Conley, are stepping down in May, which will certainly change the dynamic of that board. What are your thoughts on the board now? The strengths, weaknesses overall?
I guess first I would say I have a lot to learn still. I don't think I am uneducated or uninformed about Scituate, but I think to assume that I know everything that goes into running a board of that magnitude, it's something I haven't done yet. I've been on planning board and I learned a lot there. And when I started, I knew I had a lot to learn and I wasn't afraid to acknowledge that. I'm not afraid to acknowledge that now. And so to assume that I know what the board has done, great or done poorly, I don't think that would be fair of me to say. I will say that I think that there have been times I've disagreed with the decisions the board has made in the past. There have been even times when I was involved with town in different ways where I have had disagreements with one or more members specifically in terms of how they thought, what their decisions were. But ultimately, I've respected them all. I can't think of an example of somebody who has been a board member in the last 22 years I've been here that I haven't respected, and mainly because they've chosen to bite that off and take a look at it and try. And so even if they don't get everything perfectly, it would be a lot for me to assume I'm going to do everything perfectly as well. So I really have a lot of respect for that, and again, being involved is the key. If they're willing to step up, I'm willing to give them credit for all their effort.
Let's talk about Town Administrator Jim Boudreau. What's he doing well? What do you think he needs to focus on?
Oh gosh, I've been lucky enough to work with Jim on multiple issues in the Boy Scouts. We're in the middle of permitting a new public campground in Scituate that's been a long time coming, and we've been really excited to get to the finish line here recently. Jim is actually a phenomenal town administrator. I have no qualms about putting that out there and saying that I am a huge fan of his. I think he is full of common sense in an office where often you struggle to find it. I think that he is a straight talker and he talks to people respectfully. He gives advice to the board. And again, the board is not an expert on everything. No board member is. And Jim does an amazing job of getting information, putting it in front of them in a way that they can digest it and make wiser decisions. I will also say that Nancy Holt is our town accountant, and she is tremendous. And if you think that reading the laws and interpreting bylaws and zoning and this and that is complicated, try running a $100+ million budget and getting everything to the penny. Being able to have that information just like that in a town meeting, she's phenomenal. And so I think that the board and the town are lucky to have that team being able to sit there and run through mountains of paperwork and put it in front of a number of people, not just at the select board, but in our town departments, coordination. It's a lot, and Jim is phenomenal.
Let's talk about Scituate's coastline. Is the town doing enough to protect homes along the coast?
I think in general, I would say that there has been a long-standing work effort by this town and by our state representation to do a lot of work on that topic. And it is ongoing, and it's going to be ongoing for a long time. I think Jim Cantwell did a tremendous amount of work when he was our state representative to try and really push that to the top of the budget, to push that so that the Scituate community really did get a lot of funding, some of which still has been held up for years but is earmarked and is coming to us for those kinds of projects, be it seawalls, be it beach reclamation, be it cleanups, and the Coast Guard station. So I think that Jim really spearheaded a lot of that above town level. I think that the select board has matched pace with that. You know, we have 2 projects ongoing currently on seawall projects. Ultimately, we are a town of 9 miles high, 2 miles wide. We have probably, I don't know the factual answer, but I've got to say we're up there in the per capita amount of seawall we have in this town compared to any other town in Massachusetts and probably on the eastern seaboard. And so when you think about that geography and how much we have to be focused on how we're going to solve for, you can call it climate change, you can call it sea level rise, you can call it, you know, environmental changes and weather patterns, but we are going to face that. We are facing it already. Like I said, I've only been here 22 years when some people have been here for, you know, Mayflower generations. But what I've already been able to see in that short time period is a change in how often the harbor gets flooded, how high the water in Cole Parkway gets. And so it's real. We have to face it. It's expensive. We have to try and come up with more and more ideas of how to work collaboratively. You know, there is a debate in town right now about public versus private seawalls. There is a debate about whether or not people near the coastline have to pay for something because they're on the coast. What I would say to that is I understand the debate and I understand there are multiple sides to it, but I chose to live here because I love the ocean. I chose to live here because of my proximity to get to it, onto the beaches, to be able to go and watch sunrise at the lighthouse. And I don't live on the coast. I actually live as far from the water as I can in Scituate, which is only 2 miles away. And to think that I don't have some responsibility to work collaboratively towards those solutions is naive.
And you knew one of the question that I was going to ask next, which you sort of addressed, was about betterments. Sometimes the town does do betterments. Look, these projects are expensive. North Scituate was the North Scituate Beach Nourishment Project was about $4.5 million. The Oceanside seawall currently going on, I think, is $6 million. And there is state federal funding here, but some of that does fall on Scituate taxpayers. They're responsible for some of it. The town has done betterments regarding like Cedar Point. When they had their sewer system. Would you support betterments on homes that live along the coast to help fund seawall replacement?
It's an interesting question that ultimately I don't know if I know enough about, because I haven't served at the level where I can really have a responsibility to engage at that level of taxation and cost and fees and funding. I'm not honestly sure I can answer that yet. But what I would say is that ultimately I feel that as a member of this community, I have a responsibility anywhere in the community to be a part of that change that gets us to a safe place for the long term. Does somebody who owns an expensive property on the coastline and they chose to buy that property bear some kind of taxation responsibility? I would say I would look into it more deeply if I'm elected. But I do think that ultimately it's different than a sewer system, because that sewer system does specifically talk about the placement of a pipe between the public system and my toilet, whereas the placement of a seawall doesn't only protect that house. I would have a bigger question to dive into about whether or not there's a real difference between a private and a public seawall relative to usage or the ability to access, because ultimately if that one tiny 50-foot level of seawall were to be taken out, it's going to affect everybody inside that wall, just like it does in Holland and just like it's eventually going to more and more in the United States. And so that's a bigger question for me. But ultimately, unfortunately, I have to be honest and say I don't know enough yet, and it's something I definitely will read up on and learn about as I start to dive into things like budgets.
Let's stay with the coastline, talk about the beaches, specifically beach parking. At this last town meeting, Scituate voters agreed to increase beach parking fines from $50 to $150. It was a unanimous decision. Days later on social media, there was a little pushback with Scituate resident Heat Clark writing, Oregon's coastline is entirely public and protected. It belongs to everyone. Then Scituate resident Dina Dre wrote, I grew up very differently from most of my neighbors here in Scituate. I don't share the same mindset as many of the wealthier folks who view the ocean and sand as private property and seem determined to limit access to those who don't have the same privilege to live right on the water. Should beach parking be free and open to everyone?
So, short answer, yes. There's a difference in my mind between a parking charge and a parking violation penalty fee. I think that stickers exist for a reason. It's not just about fees, but they do matter. I think that accessibility is extremely important, and I absolutely stand by it. Yes, our beaches are public. They should remain public, and they should be open to the public, which means accessibility should be as effective as possible. I think there's a difference between a parking ticket for parking in the wrong place and whether or not that fee for somebody who abuses that privilege. There's a difference between that and charging someone for metered parking, let's say, on our beaches and on our parking lots. I don't think there should be meters at our beaches.
Let's go to local businesses. You obviously own a local business. Is
do.
the town doing enough to support local businesses?
So I think essentially I would say that the town does a really good job of trying to support local businesses. There are multiple issues there. Do I feel supported as a small business in Scituate? I do. I feel that the town hall, and I'm going to expand this from select board to town hall, does a really good job of being accessible to me if I have questions about what happens in Scituate. The town does a good job of supporting the Chamber of Commerce, which is probably one of the chief instruments that every town uses, and I think Scituate does a pretty good job of using. Ultimately, the relationship between private businesses and the public side of town is a collaboration. They are independent of each other, but they are interdependent on each other. We can't have a vibrant town without vibrant businesses. I think that Town Hall recognizes that and does a pretty good job of working with the business community. And there are lots of examples I can point to, maybe most recently the Get to Greenbush event right down by my office in Greenbush that did a great job of trying to help permitting and help make sure timelines worked so that that event could happen, so that it could be fun, so that it could really draw in and be inclusive of not just those businesses who were trying to get some awareness in that area, but make sure it was available to town, accessibility, parking, the policing of parking in that case, etc. But I do think businesses also need to remember, and I'm a small business, that we exist here in a collaboration with a public service to communities. Without public roads, you can't get to my office. Without public policing, you can't make sure that my office is in a safe space. I believe that fundamentally. And so I think that this businesses sometimes tend to, I'm going to get in trouble for this, Seth. Businesses, including my own, we can sometimes get our blinders on and start to think about our own turf a lot. And I think the businesses have to remember that they function in a larger space. And if we have the privilege of serving our community and of having customers in our community, the town is a facilitator in that. So I think the town does a pretty good job of being available. And it's on us as the business owners, myself included, to find the town and to go to the town and work with the town. There are going to be times when it comes to permitting that as a business owner, I might disagree with the town. I need outlets to be able to have those challenges, have those discussions, that dialogue. But we have to be interdependent and work together.
Let's talk about the Old Gates building. At town meeting, Scituate voters gave the select board the authority to move ahead with exploring the housing for that location. Do you think that Old Gates should be housing?
I think ultimately that question is in its infancy right now. The Old Gates property is not. It's been sitting vacant for years now. And we have, as a town, had dialogue about multiple opportunities, I'll call them, trials, different possibilities. Some of them have failed to gain traction. Some of them have failed to be viable. And there are lots and lots of opinions. Rightfully so. It's a beautiful old building on its facade. And I feel for everybody, myself included, who would love to save that facade. And what we know now from town meeting and from years of discussions is that unfortunately it's just not something that we can do financially and still be responsible to our very taxpayers. On the question of housing, this project, that project, we're just starting those dialogues. And even though we did have a significant decision on the warrant that did go through to give the select board certain permissions, number one, we've had one and only one public meeting, aside from town meeting, to discuss the current format of the decision they're trying to put forth for affordable housing. There are probably, I'm going to estimate, going to be somewhere in the range of 40 public meetings yet to come on that topic, just on this plan. And so I think to say I'm for the plan or I'm against the plan is a sort of a non-starter, because I look forward to the debate and the dialogue. I have, I'm going to say 100 solid questions on things from parking to traffic to field space to the incorporation of the Old Gates Gym, the rec department. I mean, on and on and on and on and on. And that's before you talk about a third party coming in, building a project, managing that project, possibly without full future constraints, etc. The affordable housing component, who gets it, how does that happen, what state law have to say about that? I mean, it's just complex and beyond anything. And so with one public meeting behind us that I did attend and I did ask some questions at, the thing I came away with was, wow, we have to have a lot more of these. We have to have them in a lot more places than town hall. We have to have them out amongst the community, amongst the people that may very well end up in some kind of affordable housing like that, our seniors, our veterans, our disabled residents. We have to recognize we don't have the right to only allow it to Scituate residents, so we have to understand that when we go into a decision like that. So it's vastly complicated, and if I were elected, my job, it's probably going to land squarely on my lap in the next 3 years, is going to be to go out and listen, to make sure that I'm listening in Humrock and in North Scituate and in Town Hall and in Greenbush and in Front Street and in all the other places in town. And I hope to go to the residents in their neighborhoods and ask those questions and listen, rather than, like I said in the beginning, tell them my opinions. Because right now my opinions are, I need a lot more information.
The select board's also just the beginning stages of determining what to do with Cushing Elementary when it goes away and combines with Hatherley. We posted about this online, and it really took off. I mean, we're talking either fields, housing, a big ice hockey rink was the big thing. What do you think should go there?
I hate giving lousy answers, but the answer I'm going to give first is we need time to figure it out. Whatever goes there is not only going to be somewhat complex because you're talking about an access point through a small neighborhood, you're talking about a difficult access point from anywhere else. You have a lot of people on the high school campus already. You're talking about multiple different turf, I don't want to say battles, challenges among discussing the possibilities and the opportunities of having a public space that can be redeveloped. But ultimately, you're also going to talk about budgets. It's going to be an expensive property to propose almost anything there. I think right now we are dealing with a water treatment plant that is in process. It's an expensive project and needed to be done, and I'm glad we're doing it. We just got a beautiful senior center a few years ago that is just getting into its prime and being amazingly used. But it was an expensive project. A library, Gates School. I mean, a lot of the critiques that I get when I ask our residents to give me what they love and what they want and what they'd like to see is responsible budgeting. I hear that. And even though I have been supportive of a lot of the projects we've done in town, and I'm supportive of thinking about future infrastructure that we need and can help us, ultimately, I think that with that property, we're probably going to need to really calmly think about our budgets. It's going to be expensive, and it's going to take a lot to get to a place where I could feel like I'm doing the responsible thing for our taxpayers and residents, before I say that way.
Town of Scituate overall, how do you think we're doing?
I love this town. This town is full of wonderful people, and you know, there's a reason that before living here, my wife and I lived in 6 different places for less than 2 years each. And we love adventuring and we love moving. I'm not sure if I love moving furniture, but we love being a part of different places and people. And when we landed here, we were done. And 22 years later, I still love this town, and I love it so much that even all the roles I've already gotten to play here, I want to do more. And so that's got to say something for the people here. You know, our school system is unbelievable, and I love the places that school system and bringing my 3 kids through it has taken me to meet people here on the South Shore, in Scituate, from all over the place. It's a great town. I get to sail here, I get to go to the beach here, I get to go to Wampatuck State Forest right down the street, I get to go on all the walking trails that the scouts I was involved with helped build. I mean, it's such a cool place. Our town government, I think overall, does a decent job with a very complex task list and a very complex mission. I'm sure there are people out there that disagree that we're doing really, really well. I think we're doing a really good job at a complicated job. And I'm really excited to continue being part of it, or I wouldn't be running for select board. And I'm excited. So the fact that I can still be excited after 22 years of being involved in town hall at multiple levels, to take on more and not be afraid of what everybody keeps telling me that I'm asking for trouble, has got to say something for this town that I plan to be in for a long time.
All right, Dr. Nico, one more time, why should Scituate residents vote for you on May 31st?
Well, first off, I want to remind them it's May 31st, so please, no matter who you vote for, go vote. It's why we live in this country, and it's something that is a blessing for us to be able to do no matter where you're from and what you believe. So please, please, please go vote for somebody. I think that this town is worth fighting for. I think this town is worth building and rebuilding and evolving and growing with and going out and rolling up our sleeves and being passionate about. It's what I want to do, and it's what I want to keep doing. The main reason that I want them to vote for me is because I really care about listening to our people. And that really doesn't matter who you are, where you're coming from, what you think we're doing right, what you think we're doing wrong, and what you think I may be doing. I want to hear from our residents on a constant basis, and I really want to commit myself to making communication as smooth as possible in this town, to getting out in our neighborhoods, in our residents' homes and places where they go, and not just waiting for them to come to me. And I hope that people, if they have a chance before they go to the ballot box on the 31st, take an opportunity to go out in our community and ask who Dr. Nico is. I know on the ballot it's going to say Dr. Nicolai Afanasenko, and it's the longest name on the ballot, but I'm just Dr. Nico around town because I've been involved here since I got here, and I hope that if voters go out and ask their friends and neighbors who I am, they're going to get a reflection of what I'm trying to say today.
Dr. Nico, appreciate your time.
Thanks,
and remember, folks, that May election, May 31st, 2025, from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. in that high school gym.